So welcome to the Skip Life. This is only my third video, and in these videos, if you haven't seen the other two, they're basically me analyzing my race footage to try to find ways to improve. This week we've got New Hampshire Motor Speedway, and it's a different configuration this time than I'm used to. Normally it's the road course with north or south oval, and this time it's just the road course, which has a windy section at the start. Okay, so let's take a look at a lap as I pass the barrier wall here on the left and set up on the right for turn 1. Headed down the front straight here, making note of the distance markers on the right, but looking to the left now for the turn in. I was taking a very wide late turn in for that first turn. Tight to the right here, clip the grass slightly to open up the turn on the left, and as brave and as fast as you can past the wall on the right. That barrier wall is very easy to hit, especially if you have cold tires that the fronts aren't gripping. You might have to lift there. Look into the corner, braking down to first, then easing off, clip the curb, look all the way up the hill on the right. So up over this hill and down again. You can kind of spot the apex of the next turn from pretty far back, and if you carry enough speed, if you're brave enough, you can gain a lot of time here. And if people are following you, you can kind of get away from them if you kind of hit your mark on that one. Uphill again, and staying to the left as straight as possible through this section, setting up for the trickiest turn of the track, which is the next left-hander. This turn just requires a ton of car balancing, just feathering the throttle on the brake, trying to keep the car tight to the left to open up the right-hand turn, and get some speed on exit. Avoid the grass on the left, stay straight through there, really just braking for that last left-hand turn, and again, pass the barrier wall on the left as close as you can to the barrier wall, within reason, and that is a lap. What was funny here is I actually got the same lap exactly twice in a row. The fastest lap I saw all week was a 1:11.989, and I was fairly close to that. My fastest laps were in the 1:12.1 range, and I did manage to get that lap time about 2 or 3 times. So this just shows what happens if you kind of overshoot this turn a little bit and take it too wide. And another mistake I was making was in turn 1, just getting loose, and I probably wasn't being helped by that really wide entry I was taking. So there isn't really a ton to say about the first race I had. I kind of had a conservative mindset. I kind of felt like my races last time on Oran Park in the last video were kind of messy, and going into this one I just kind of wanted to just see if I could get through a race without any huge mistakes and keep it clean, which is more or less what happened. And it doesn't always make for the most exciting video when you're racing kind of conservatively and you're just basically just trying to hold your position. So coming down into this right hand turn, the car behind me is right on my back bumper, and I think I pushed my braking too late. Got a little loose there, a little wide, and the car just felt really slippery turning in. Up over the hill, I'm thinking, okay, I need to start hitting my marks. I need to give myself some breathing room, and to my credit, I did do that pretty well for 2 or 3 laps, and I started giving myself some space from the cars behind. However, on lap 4, I make a mistake, and it kind of throws me back into the mix a bit. Now I'm wondering if a lot of these turn 1 situations where I'm getting loose have to do with me not downshifting correctly. I think it's a combination of me downshifting too early, not throttle blipping correctly, and I'm also wondering if on this instance I'm not looking far enough into the corner to find the apex. You've got to look very far across the track to the left to find the curbing, and I don't think I'm doing that, so I think it's a combination of those things that's causing me to do this. Now it does look really cool in a replay, but you lose so much time getting loose like that and drifting. Now that mistake brings me to the next thing I wanted to point out about this particular race, and that's giving up positions that I don't necessarily have to give up. As this car is coming up beside me on the right, he still has the outside line, and you could make the case that if I didn't lift there, I could have held my position, I could have fought for that corner. And that's just something I need to work on, is not just giving away positions, because there really is no proof that that driver actually is faster than me. And as the race progresses, I actually do end up catching him and passing or gaining that position back. So it really didn't make sense to give the position up in the first place. But nevertheless, that did lead me to my first overtake in turn 1, and this overtake gave me a little bit of confidence that I could actually do it through a section I've never driven before, other than a few minutes in practice prior to this race. guys heard of sleepwalking? This is sleep racing, because this is one of the worst lap ones I've probably ever had. Mostly my fault. I don't know what happened during this race. The neurons were just not firing. I was just not functioning on all cylinders during this race. I don't know why. But it's almost like, I mean, I looked at the replay and I was like, what was I thinking? I obviously wasn't, because I turned into that guy, didn't give enough room. Now here I was just hoping everyone would see me, how slow I was going. Obviously not, because that just murdered that guy. I don't know who you are, I'm sorry. The purple car cut me off, gave me some tire contact, but what a disaster. So then somehow my car is more or less undamaged. I don't really know how after both of those collisions, but I managed to string together a few competent corners to try to get back into the race. And believe it or not, I'm going to have contact again, because now I'm behind people that are slower than me, and I'm not adjusting to it, as I just basically overshoot this guy by a mile. And luckily it didn't affect him too much, as he's able to continue on. Although I'm shot onto the grass, and just about everyone in the field gets by me in that incident. I catch a break early as I'm able to get past this car on the right. And I have a pretty good turn 1. I notice that pretty much everyone else is taking a tighter line. They're turning in earlier into turn 1 than me. I like to take that wide line, but for competitive racing it might not be the best option. I see everyone going in a little earlier than me. And I get some speed through here on the car on the inside, but there is an accident on the right, and I'm slowed a bit. Almost get caught up with the car I just passed, but I take a slightly more defensive line, driving a little bit more to the middle. Looks like he's going to back off, and I'm able to hold that position. Now, I'm probably faster than most of these drivers ahead, but I've lost so many positions at this point. One of the things I like about this track is just by nailing the corners you can catch up to another car, so the draft really isn't a huge factor in this race. You can see I'm just coming up behind the blue car now, and I'm going to effectively set up for a pass. I did better there to not rear end him. You're going to see just the difference in speed as I come down the hill. Really should have pushed for a pass here on the left immediately, but that section gets tighter at the end, so who knows, maybe that was a better option. I was able to easily get by this guy on the inside. Here I ended up overshooting turn 1 by quite a bit, and that puts him right on my back bumper. Luckily I was able to hold the position though. So I'm going to go super defensive here, further to the right, basically in the middle, as far to the right as I can, and still make the corner and not completely mess it up. And I recognize going up this hill that I really need to kind of turn up the volume. I'm going to have to push harder to get away from these guys, which I'm not doing at the moment, as they're just trailing me. And a little bit defensive still, taking a turn to the middle. Luckily though, I'm able to get a bit of speed up this section and get away from them and catch up. So by the middle of lap 4, I'd almost caught up to the next pack of cars, and just by nailing the apex there, I'm able to actually catch up to this green car, and I'm going to settle in behind him up the hill. And I think for the next lap as well, I'm still going to be behind this car. I get a burst of speed down the hill, but because all the cars are kind of congested, I'm not able to capitalize. And someone else, this light neon car, I don't remember the name of the driver, kind of takes advantage and just gets by me. And I didn't really even know he was there. I kind of forgot he was there the whole time. So I was kind of miffed that he got by there. Going into turn 1, that purple car is going to slow up quite a bit. I don't know why. I'm not really too sure why, but I'm held up by him, and it's kind of a mess here. I do a good job to really insist on this pass, and luckily he doesn't box me out. He does let me by here, and I'm able to make a decent pass on the inside. Everyone locking up their brakes, and it can get pretty crazy on this track. There isn't a ton of room on this track. It looks wide, but as you go through the turns, it just feels really tight. I did good to improvise and stay to the outside there, trying to get some speed up here to pass on the outside. Luckily, coming up here where, like I said, it tightens, I lift and I don't get tire contact there. So I'm doing a better job of just being aware of my surroundings and not killing anyone else. Yeah, again, down here, I'm going to get some speed. Can't really do anything with it yet, though, but I do think on this turn one, I'm going to set up for a pass on this green car, finally, after a few laps. Just staying within the slipstream of the draft, so getting a bit of speed from that, and this was a good pass. He goes a little bit wide, see. He did a good job too. Oh, he got loose. He almost hit me. Good section through there. You just see how relaxed it looks when I get through the first section when I'm doing well. It's just so much more relaxed when I'm hitting those marks versus when I'm tight and kind of forcing it. And I'm going to settle in behind this red car and eventually work my way up to a pass on him as well. So skipping ahead to the start of lap 6, and I'm able to make a little bit of a later pass attempt on this red car, but I think after a lap and a quarter, I think he knows I'm a bit faster than him and that I want by. And he's able to stay on road without spinning behind me. Good section again through here, nice and relaxed. Not scrubbing the tires. Now, I'm not entirely sure which lap this was on, but I was able to pass this yellow car as well shortly after. Then in the next turn, in the 90-degree right, he almost rear ends me. Oh my god, that was close. But luckily he didn't. So chasing down that light green car that passed me earlier, that would be the one that took advantage. That's actually Dale Earnhardt Jr. just ahead of him, and I had it in my mind that I wanted to catch him as well. Make JR proud of me. But I didn't quite catch him. He moves up through the field pretty good in this race. But I was able to catch the green car, the light green car, and get my position back on a different section of the track, which I was kind of proud of this pass. So now in the beginning of lap 14, I'm looking at this car up ahead, wondering what I'm going to do with it, because it's kind of taking an erratic line there. Definitely not driving smooth. Here I should have really insisted on staying right, but he kind of took away my line there, so I go left, which really wasn't a solution. Changed my mind, and at the same time he sort of cut me off to set up his turn, and then I got hit by the car behind. And that entire sequence could have been probably avoided if I insisted on pushing for a position on the right, and I just didn't do that. And that car that I was unable to pass kind of does me a favor and catches the curb at the bottom of the hill and just gets airborne here. And this is the view from what I saw. So in the last few laps, I really threw everything I could at this green car, trying to catch up, trying to get beside him, and really had no answer for him. So a day later we come back for race number 3, and what I wanted to talk about with this race is just how my expectations are affecting the outcome of some of my races. Because I qualified quite well in this race, I'm 5th on the grid with a couple of the other faster drivers, Edwin, and just I recognize the names ahead of me. And the thing is though, I'm expecting them to be perfect, I'm expecting them to not make mistakes, when that's actually exactly what happens. And I end up rear-ending someone because of it, and it negatively affects the outcome of my race. So unlike the night before, in this race I was in a much better frame of mind, much more focused and at the same time relaxed. I wasn't nervous at all racing with these guys, and I had a really good lap one, except for one mistake at the bottom of the hill, which is coming up. I'm driving more or less as fast as I can here, although just keeping note of the distance of the car ahead, trying not to overshoot him as well, and just having my foot ready on the brake. Now this is the mistake, I'm going to make a mistake on this right-hand turn. I think I just turned it too sharply and end up having to use second gear there. Now there's a very big gap opened up because of that mistake, but through turn 1 and through this first section I'm able to close the gap a little bit, and you can just see my car closing on the cars ahead. And even through the next section, although it is possible that they are slowing themselves down by battling, I'm doing a very good job here to catch up as well. So it's a combination of those two things that I'm already back on the rear end of the car I was before. And this is where the mistake is going to happen. The red car over the crest of the hill at the top is going to just cut off Edwin and basically just bounce right off of him. Edwin's a little bit wide there. And I am just a tiny bit too slow to react to what's going on here. I should have given the car immediately ahead of me slightly more time to react to that situation. I wasn't trying to take advantage or anything. It just was one of those things where I just didn't react to what was ahead of the car ahead of me. This was sort of similar to the mistake I made in the last race, where I just don't give the guy in the inside enough room. Right there you can just see the minor damage I had in the front of my car. So everything with the car seems totally fine here, but when this green car behind me just catches up to me and blasts by me at the speed of light, I knew something was a little off. I think one of the reasons I like this track is just it feels dangerous, and just how there's danger or risk in just every corner. If you take this turn up ahead too wide, as I think his name is Joe Peak does here, the back or outside right tire can get loose on this curve, and that's what happens to him. And yeah, the track is just really gritty. It has a really nice feel in the force feedback. It's very bumpy. It's just the only way I could describe it. It's just a gritty track. So as this car behind me sets up for another pass against me, I'm not quite sure what happened here, if I sensed that he was getting loose or there was something wrong with his line, because I kind of throw the car sideways here. I don't know if it's coincidence that I made the same mistake as him. I'm not quite sure. No, I think I just knew on the path that I was going at the speed that I was actually going to overtake him and run into him, and I think I pushed the brakes hard to avoid it, and that just spun the car. A tiny mistake here, just turning too sharply through the turn, getting a little bit loose. I do lose this position to the car on my inside or my left side, but I do well to stave off another pass from the other car behind him. Taking a little bit of a defensive line. Doesn't really matter though, this guy really pushes for the pass, but I stick with him, stay as far to the right as possible, get a good run up the hill, and I'm able to stave off that pass. Watch my steering wheel, just as how much input I'm having to put in to balance this car, give him just enough room, and I did well to keep that position. And this is a replay of the tight turn. You just see the run that both cars had on me, and he almost pulled off that pass. At the time I thought this was kind of crazy, but it doesn't look too bad. Over the crest and down the hill. This was really where I earned the position back. and I was able to stay ahead of him and also get that other position back from this guy. So I was battling pretty hard. I didn't give up. My car just was a little bit slower on the straight, on the front straight before turn 1 is where it was I was really losing time. For most of the rest of the track, probably didn't make a huge difference with that damage. Now I'm going to show very, very little of race number 4. Most of the action happened in the first few laps. It looks like I'm going to learn my lesson because I give this purple car plenty of room when it comes in on the right. For what it's worth, I've gotten a lot better at dealing with lap 1 situations. I used to be very, very timid and very tense, and I can tell from the video footage, even though I don't have any third-person camera on myself, just looking at the replay, I can tell when I'm relaxed, and when going through a turn it looks almost effortless, and it really comes through in the replay. And again, very smooth through here, very smooth up the hill as I follow this purple car. And I'm driving quite well here, it seems. I don't think I make any big mistakes on this lap, and going into lap 2 I'm able to set up a pass on the car ahead. He got a little bit loose there, which shortened the distance between us. And this is actually a tricky section. It looks super easy, but you're downshifting to second, trying to keep tight to the inside left turn, and that sets me up handily for a pass against this purple car. Now I'm a lot more comfortable taking that turn on the outside. You can just see the steering wheel getting a little bit loose and just overshot the turn slightly. Was able to keep just enough speed up to stay ahead of him as he was really pushing right behind me to get that position back immediately. Despite making that pass, I was kept under pressure for quite a while after. And once again, we have a mistake in turn 1. It seemed on average I was making about 1 of those per race, and the car that I had previously passed darts by me pretty much immediately. Now, one of the tricks I was using through this first sector was past the last turn on the left, past the wall. I was actually just holding the shifter down. Normally this car requires you to lift off throttle, but because the back tires are skipping over those bumps and spinning, it was actually automatically shifting up to third. It wasn't always working. It was working about 95% of the time. Now, this was the last position I ended up losing during this race, and pretty much held my position until the end. So this is race number 5. Looks like I qualified a little bit further back in this one. I'm going to get through this section pretty well. Staying to the right, there's a driver on my left. And I'm going to give this guy a lot of room, and I don't know if I'm rewarded with some good karma here, but through this turn, I give him lots and lots of room, and it actually pays off because I'm able to hold my position. So as I go up the hill here, the car ahead, I'm not really sure what was going on with it, but it drops almost all of its speed, and I'm able to just kind of blow by him. But by the time I'm at the bottom of the hill, everyone is just on my back tires. Just picked up a lot of pressure there. Luckily, was able to have some good corners and keep the position, at least temporarily. so I managed a pretty decent pass here. However, I don't set up the final exit turn quite as well as I had been. Not quite as far to the right there. And then here, I go a little wide, but I also botch my gear changes, and that allows him to get alongside me for the next turn. Totally my fault. Now, I know he's there, so I can't really just turn into him. But then the other guy goes with him and kind of catches me off guard. Actually hits me a little bit, nudging me out of the way. I'm really not sure if I like that. That's, I don't know if I call that quite dirty, but it is what it is. So now he's ahead of me, and I put on my game face and stuck with him for a little while. Went at him about as hard as I could. Get on the inside here, coming down into this turn, but he hangs with me pretty well. And he is just not backing off. He is right beside me. And it becomes an issue of this next turn is pretty much suicidal if I dive on the inside of him, so I opt not to do that. So I stick with him long enough to set up a pass on turn 1, and he just barely lets me pull off this pass. And then it becomes painfully clear that I'm just not nailing this sector the way it was in the previous races, and I actually hit the wall. Not the wall itself, but the tire barrier. Now, at the start of lap 5, I make a just crucial error that I need to remember not to do this, because I line up behind this car as it's holding me up, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. I need to stay left here and go around him, because the way I positioned my car behind him forced me to lift, and by the end of the straight, I'm just nowhere near where I should be, and that pass is just, it's gone. That pass, because of that mistake, that pass has disappeared. And I need to find a way around these cars. Like, there's just no excuse for that. And just, that was a serious lack of judgment or a serious lack of aggression, I'm not sure. And look, it ends up in me getting passed by the orange car eventually, a little further down the road. Again, red and blue behind me, doesn't give that car any room, hits that one as well. I just really like this view of all these cars in a row. I think it was 5 or 6 cars that were just lined up, and just as lap 7 and the cars are still not that spread out, so it just shows that this is just a great track to race on, and this is part of the reason why. So the red and blue car is back, and to his credit, I will say that this was a great pass that he made. But then on lap 9, it looks like he went a little straight on this turn, wasn't able to keep to the left, and it looks like he took out this car. So the chain reaction from that crash was slowing up a little bit and getting caught up by the blue car, and he makes a really good pass on me as well. So I was still able to kind of hang with these guys. It's not like they left me in the dust, but as I'm watching them race, I'm really wondering, is the blue and red car going to let the other car pass, if that's a possibility? And I seriously had my doubts. And going into turn 1, the other car did have a position on him, and he just cut the turn too tightly and took him out as well. In the next lap, I was able to close the distance and wondering if I should really bother messing with this guy. And as we go into the final turn, it looks like he just cut in too tightly and lost some of his speed, and I actually ended up hitting him. And it was at that point that I kind of decided I'd had enough. So I had a really great lap 1 here. I was really pushing, and it was one of those instances where the start of the race was just great, and I could have potentially got a 3rd place finish, but again, I was denied, and we'll just see what happens here. This car is getting inside on my right, and gets ahead a little bit. Now down at the bottom of the hill, he's going to get loose. Now watch his car. I believe he gets loose changing gears right there. I get alongside him, and I just thought this was really crazy because it was just amazing how we didn't have contact with the rear wheels there. Especially this next turn. I was sure he was going to hit me there. Luckily he backed off. I was just going for it here. This was me on full attack. I'm in a really good position to pass. Unfortunately here, I'm going to get loose, and the car behind me is going to get loose as well, I think. Let's see what happens. That's a really tight entry for me. No excuse, though. I should have figured it out. At least, though, this week, when I'm getting loose on turn 1, it's not like Oran Park, where every time I did it, I was basically spinning out. At least I'm able to continue, and I'm recovering the car, even though it's loose. Now through this exit, I'm going to be just about as brave as I ever have been up against that wall. Now in previous seasons, I think I'd always gone all the way around that curve, but there really isn't any reason to do that. It's not course cutting, and it gives you extra space to basically pull off the pass like that. Now, I'm not going to say a lot about the next few laps, but it was probably some of the best driving I've done all season. Ended up getting passed by the red car and then gaining that position back when we made a mistake. But then for the next 4 or 5 laps, I really did a great job of just hitting my marks and keeping everybody behind me, because they were really chasing me down, and they don't actually get by me until an incident happens up ahead. Unfortunately, I didn't really get to find out if that was going to be the case because a car ahead spins out and I have to avoid him and lift off the gas. Now, it was really just a matter of not knowing what that car up ahead was going to do, and if he had just held his brakes, which you're kind of supposed to do, I would have been able to keep my foot down, but unfortunately, I didn't know which way that car was going to go. I thought it was going left, and then I switched to right, and that's why I had to lift. I get slowed by the orange car, almost making contact, and that allows the red car to get by. And I did fight back against the red car and almost pass him, but when he was going uphill, he made yet another mistake, slipping on the curbing, and I ended up hitting him. And that was pretty much my race week. Despite all the incidents that happened and having a terrible race 2, just crashing into a lot of people, is just my favorite track in the schedule, hands down, in whatever configuration they run. And I had a blast driving it. I don't think I'll do as many races on the track next week, which is, I believe, Oulton Park. That's another great track. It looks like I'm only going to get about 4 races in this week. Which is fine. I'm fine with having a shorter video next time because this one is insanely long. But I had a few good races on that one as well, and that will be in the next video. So I'll see you then.